There's something profoundly magnetic about a person who no longer needs to be chosen. When you stop chasing, you stop bleeding energy. You stop seeking validation from someone who was never meant to carry that weight. You begin to operate from wholeness, not hunger. And that shift, that sacred calm, pulls everything back into alignment. The avoidant always comes back. Not because you manipulated them, not because you waited perfectly, but because your stillness became louder than their running. When you stopped reaching, something in their soul started to remember what peace felt like. When you stopped proving your worth, they began to see it. The truth is, every time you chase, you teach them that love is pressure. You teach them that affection means invasion. But when you step back, when you honor your own boundaries, your silence speaks the language of safety, the very thing their heart has always craved, but their fears never allowed them to receive. There's divine power in detachment. It doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop controlling. You stop gripping at what was never yours to hold. And when you release that grip, something incredible happens. You start attracting from truth, not from trauma. Your energy becomes sovereign, your love becomes clean, and your presence becomes unforgettable. The avoidant feels that. They might not understand it consciously, but energetically, they know. They sense that your absence carries more peace than their patterns ever could. Your stillness becomes the mirror they've been running from. It reflects the emptiness they tried to escape by withdrawing from intimacy, and in that quiet, their heart begins to ache for the very connection they once resisted. When you no longer chase, you step into your own divine rhythm. You stop waiting and you start becoming. You become the embodiment of what they couldn't face, the person who loves without losing themselves. And that kind of love, the kind that doesn't demand, doesn't beg, doesn't shrink, that love leaves an imprint on their soul. So when they return, it's not just to you. It's to the memory of what it felt like to be met with grounded love, to be near someone who didn't make their fear wrong, who didn't need to fix them, who simply stood in truth and said, I will not chase what runs. I will stand where peace lives. And that's the ultimate paradox of love. The one who chases loses power, but the one who stands still radiates it. Because love isn't about pursuit, it's about presence. And presence, when rooted in self-worth, is the most irresistible force on earth. They come back because you found what they lost, yourself. And when you live from that space of completeness, you don't just attract them back. You attract everything that was meant for you, effortlessly. You became the calm in their chaos, the quiet in their storm, and the mirror to their soul. That's why they return. Not because you waited, but because you transformed. When you stop chasing something deep inside of you begins to shift. You reclaim your power. You begin to understand that attraction isn't built on pursuit. It's built on energy. Every time you chase someone, especially an avoidant, you are sending a message that says, my peace depends on you. And the moment that becomes your frequency, you lose the quiet magnetism that draws people in. You become an echo of their fear instead of the mirror of their growth. Energetic detachment isn't about pretending not to care. It's about being so deeply connected to yourself that your emotions don't control you. It's the moment you stop reaching for someone to fill a void and realize that the only person who can fill it is you. When you do that, your energy becomes still, grounded, magnetic. And that energy doesn't chase, it attracts. It calls to others, not through desperation, but through peace. Avoidants are drawn to peace because peace is the one thing they can't find within themselves. They spend their lives running from emotional intensity, from expectations, from closeness that feels like suffocation. But when you stand in your own energy, calm, unbothered, radiant, you become the safe space they've been unconsciously searching for. Your calm presence is not something they can analyze or control. It's something they feel. It stirs something ancient inside them, a longing to rest, to be seen, to breathe. When you detach energetically, you stop feeding the cycle of pursuit and withdrawal. You stop reinforcing their fears. Most people think that love means constant proving, showing up, reminding someone how much you care. But with an avoidant, that approach only makes them retreat further. The moment you stop chasing, you communicate something powerful. You are free to go. My peace doesn't depend on your presence. That freedom disarms them, because for the first time, your energy doesn't demand, it allows. Abru. There's a sacred difference between need and desire. Need pulls from lack. Desire flows from wholeness. When you operate from need, you vibrate scarcity. You send out the message that you're incomplete without them. When you operate from desire, you're saying, I would love to share my peace with you, but I am complete either way. That's the kind of energy that becomes magnetic. That's the kind of energy that makes an avoidant stop in their tracks. Confused, curious, drawn in by something they can't quite explain. Ibrowa. Energetic detachment isn't coldness, it's clarity. It's being fully present with yourself, fully aware of your worth, and unwilling to trade that for temporary validation. You stop over-explaining. You stop convincing. You stop performing for love. Instead, you radiate it. You live it. You walk into every room knowing that your energy is your currency and that peace is your most valuable asset. When you reach that level of inner power, people feel it before you speak. Your silence becomes a language. Your absence becomes a mirror. And the avoidant, accustomed to being aced, expected to be needed, suddenly encounters something different. They meet someone who isn't trying to catch them, someone who isn't begging for crumbs, someone who is simply being. And that beingness, that divine stillness, breaks through their defenses in a way words never could. In the stillness of your detachment, their avoidance has nowhere left to hide. Your calm exposes their chaos. Your peace shows them what real connection could feel like, steady, soft, unthreatening. It's not the absence of emotion that pulls them back, it's the purity of your energy. You've stopped chasing, and in doing so, you've become magnetic. This is the paradox of attraction. When you no longer need someone, you create the space for them to choose you freely, and people can feel freedom. It's the rarest energy in the world. So when you let go, when you stop running after what's fleeing, you stop chasing their love and start attracting their soul. That's the power of energetic detachment. It's not the end of connection. It's the beginning of true magnetism. There is something profoundly powerful about a person who has learned to stand in their own emotional independence. The kind of person who no longer needs validation to feel worthy, who no longer seeks approval to feel loved. When you reach that place, you stop trying to convince anyone to see your value, because you've already seen it yourself. Inner wholeness is the quiet confidence that says, I am enough, even if you never choose me. And that energy is irresistible, especially to someone who fears closeness. An avoidant runs not because they don't care, but because they are terrified of needing someone. They associate love with loss of freedom. They've been programmed to believe that connection means control, that intimacy means engulfment. So, when they sense that someone is dependent on their response, they retreat. It's not rejection, it's self-preservation. But when you stand in your wholeness, when you are rooted in self-respect, that fear dissolves. Because your love no longer feels like a demand, it feels like a gift. When you stop needing someone to make you feel complete, you start relating from abundance, not emptiness. You no longer give to get. You give because it's who you are. You no longer love to be loved in return. You love because your cup is already full. That fullness creates an energetic safety around you. People sense it without words. They feel it in your posture, in your tone, in the way you listen, in the way you no longer chase approval. You become someone whose presence is nourishing instead of draining. Avoidants are hypersensitive to emotional intensity. They feel suffocated when someone's love comes from desperation. But when your love comes from wholeness, it doesn't invade their space. It invites them into peace. It doesn't pull, it allows. It doesn't beg, it stands. And that kind of presence disarms their defenses. It makes them curious. They wonder why they can breathe around you when they couldn't breathe around others. They wonder why your calm feels safer than anyone else's affection. Inner wholeness shifts your vibration from fear to faith. When you live from that place, you stop reacting to rejection because you understand rejection doesn't define your worth. It just redirects your energy. You no longer need closure because you found completion within. You no longer collapse when someone withdraws because your stability doesn't depend on their attention. You've built a home inside yourself, and nothing outside can shake it. When you reach that level of emotional independence, The avoidant feels it too. They sense that your love is not a trap. It's not an emotional contract they have to sign. It's a frequency of freedom, and freedom is what they crave most. They come closer not because you chased, but because your wholeness gave them permission to approach without fear. You've become the example of what healthy connection feels like. A love that doesn't cling, a love that doesn't punish, a love that doesn't collapse. It's ironic, isn't it? The moment you stop trying to get love, you start to radiate it. The moment you stop needing attention, you attract it naturally. That's the law of energetic equilibrium. What you embody, you attract. When you are whole, you attract wholeness. When you are secure, you draw insecurity. And the avoidant, someone used to chaos, pursuit, and pressure, suddenly feels the peace of balance in your energy. It calls to them like gravity. This is why wholeness is magnetic. Because it communicates strength without words. It tells the world, I am already complete. And that message, that vibration, pierces through the avoidance armor more powerfully than any confession, any pursuit, any apology ever could. You've become what they could never find in themselves, a person who loves freely without needing to be saved. And that kind of power doesn't chase. It draws everything meant for it effortlessly. When you stop reaching out, when your voice no longer fills their phone, when your energy withdraws from the constant cycle of pursuit, something profound begins to happen. Your absence becomes the mirror they can no longer avoid. Silence, when it comes from peace, has a way of amplifying truth. It shows them what words never could. It shows them what they truly had and what they lost when they ran. Avoidants are driven by an unconscious fear of closeness. They convince themselves that distance keeps them safe, that space gives them control. But when you stop chasing, their protective walls no longer serve a purpose. There's no one left pushing against them. And in that stillness, they meet themselves. They begin to feel the weight of their own solitude. The silence that once brought them comfort begins to echo differently. It begins to ache. Your absence activates their awareness because it removes the distraction of your pursuit. As long as you were chasing, they could justify their dista. They could tell themselves, I need space, I need freedom, this is too much. But when the energy stops flowing toward them, when your attention fades, the equation changes. Suddenly, the silence becomes louder than your presence ever was. They start to notice the gap, the missing warmth, the emotional rhythm that used to fill their days. Avoidants are not immune to loss. They're simply skilled at delaying the feeling of it. But silence has a way of catching up to them. It breaks through the walls they built and forces them to confront the emptiness they've been avoiding their entire lives. They begin to realize that your presence was not the problem. It was their own fear of receiving love. They start to see that what they were running from wasn't you, but the reflection of their own vulnerability that your love awakened. When you go quiet, your energy stops compensating for their avoidance. You no longer carry both sides of the relationship, and that energetic balance, the stillness, creates an emotional vacuum. Humans are wired to seek equilibrium. When one person pulls away completely, the other naturally feels the pull to move closer. This is not manipulation, it's energetic truth. The absence of your energy triggers their awareness of contrast, the peace you brought versus the emptiness that remains. Silence is not just the absence of sound, it's the presence of power. It's a sacred invitation for the other person to step into responsibility. When you no longer fill the space with effort, they are left with their own thoughts, their own emotions, their own restlessness. For the first time, they can't hide behind distraction. They can't use your pursuit as proof that they are still in control. The dynamic shifts completely. Your quiet presence starts to speak louder than all the words you ever said. Your absence becomes their awakening. They begin to replay memories, to revisit moments they brushed off, to feel the warmth they once took for granted. They may not admit it right away. Avoidants rarely do. But internally, they start to sense something they haven't felt in a long time, longing, and not for anyone else, but for the peace, acceptance, and balance that your energy carried. You didn't punish them with silence. You blessed them with perspective. You created the only environment where growth can happen, the space of awareness. Because until they feel the absence, they can't value the presence. Until they feel the loss, they can't appreciate the love. And that's the paradox. The quieter you become, the louder your impact grows. So when your communication stops, it's not the end. It's the mirror moment. It's when their avoidance stops feeling like safety and starts feeling like loneliness. It's when they begin to realize that running isn't freedom, it's isolation. And that realization always starts with your silence. That's why absence is so powerful. It doesn't chase, it reveals, it awakens. It teaches them without a single word what company connection truly meant. Ibrar. Avoidants don't trust intensity, they trust consistency. They don't open to words, they open to energy. For someone who has built their entire life around emotional self-protection, closeness can feel like danger. It's not that they don't crave love, it's that love has always been associated with overwhelm, judgment, or loss of control. So when you meet an avoidant with emotional pressure, constant messages, demands, or the need for reassurance, they retreat further. But when your presence becomes calm, grounded, and stable, you create something they've never truly known before: emotional safety. Emotional safety isn't built through chasing or convincing someone to open up. It's built in silence, in stillness, in the unwavering energy of self-trust. It's the kind of safety that says, you don't have to be anything other than who you are right now. When an avoidant feels that energy, free from pressure, free from expectations, it's disarming. For the first time, their nervous system starts to relax. They begin to associate your energy with peace rather than danger. And that is when their heart begins to open, slowly, almost imperceptibly. Ibri, your stillness becomes their sanctuary. The way you hold yourself, the calm in your tone, the lack of reaction, the steadiness in your energy, communicates something their mind can't understand, but their heart feels deeply. This person is safe. That safety is not built on words. It's built on presence. The avoidant doesn't return because of what you said. They return because of what they felt in your silence. When you stop chasing, you stop feeding their fear of engulfment. You give them the gift of space, something they desperately need but never knew how to ask for. And in that space, they begin to realize that closeness with you doesn't cost them their autonomy. They start to see that love doesn't have to mean losing themselves. That realization alone can change the entire dynamic. Your energy teaches them that connection doesn't have to be chaos. It can be quiet. It can be kind. It can be safe. Avoidants aren't healed by grand gestures. They're healed by steady energy. They don't need fireworks. They need consistency. Your stillness becomes a message of trust. It says, I am not here to control you. I am not here to fix you. I am here to stand in peace. And peace is magnetic. It speaks to the deepest part of them, the part that has longed for love without feeling suffocated by it. When you embody emotional safety, you stop reacting to their distance. You stop trying to decode every silence or overanalyze every withdrawal. Instead, you trust your center. You trust your calm. And because your energy no longer fluctuates with their behavior, they begin to see you differently. They see someone unshakable, someone whose love doesn't come with pressure, someone who knows how to stand still even in uncertainty. That kind of energy changes everything. It communicates power without words and love without fear. Abrawir. In stillness, you teach them that intimacy isn't something to escape from. It's something to rest in. You show them that connection can coexist with freedom. They begin to sense that your energy doesn't threaten their independence, it actually strengthens it. And for an avoidant, that's transformative. Because, for perhaps the first time, they realize that love doesn't have to cost them peace. It can bring it. This is the paradox of emotional safety. The less you try to hold on, the more they trust you. The calmer you are, the more they feel drawn in. The quieter you become, the more they listen. And the moment they feel safe, not through words, but through your consistent presence, they begin to return, not out of guilt, not out of obligation, but because your stillness became their calm, your peace became their home. And once they've felt that, they always find their way back to it. There is an incredible transformation that happens the moment you stop trying to control what's leaving your life. When you release the need to manage outcomes, to chase closure, to hold on to what's slipping away, you begin to experience a deep kind of freedom that can't be shaken. Power is not found in grasping, it's found in surrender. The one who stops chasing doesn't lose the connection, they transcend it. They rise above the attachment that kept them small and step into the truth of who they really are. That is the moment everything begins to shift. Eber, when you surrender, you reclaim your energy. You stop pouring yourself. Endless loop of trying to change someone who isn't ready to meet you. You stop running after potential, after what could be, and you start standing in what is. That's power. When you can face reality without resentment, without fear, without the need to fix it. You no longer play the role of savior or victim. You become the observer, centered and awake. And from that state, love no longer feels like survival. It feels like choice. Abraha avoidants are drawn to control. It's how they maintain a safety in relationships. The more someone tries to pull them closer, the more they pull away. But when you surrender, when you stop trying to make them stay, when you release the emotional chase, they can no longer run from you because you're no longer chasing. You've stepped off the battlefield, you've stopped fighting for love, and instead, you've chosen to embody it. That energy is liberating, for you and for them. There's a divine paradox at play here. Surrender looks like letting go, but it's actually the highest form of strength. It's not giving up, it's giving over. To truth, to alignment, to peace. It's saying, I trust that whatever is meant for me cannot miss me. And that trust radiates through your energy. It communicates confidence, not control. It speaks to the universe, to the other person, to your own soul, saying, I am no longer trying to possess what is meant to be free. That vibration draws things back to you naturally, Beck. Aw's freedom is magnetic. Eber, the avoidant, begins to feel this shift. Your energy, once heavy with need and expectation, becomes light, spacious, and serene. You no longer demand answers or timelines. You no longer react to their distance with panic. You've made peace with uncertainty, and that peace changes everything. Suddenly, your love feels safe, not because you're trying to make it safe, but because it's rooted in acceptance. They sense that. They feel the difference between pressure and presence, and that awareness starts pulling them closer. Surrender teaches you the art of detachment without indifference. It allows you to love deeply without losing yourself. You stop waiting for their return, and instead, you return to yourself. You rediscover the beauty of your own company, the quiet strength that comes from self-trust. And in that wholeness, your energy becomes complete again. You've shifted from needing love to being love. And that's when everything that aligns with that energy begins to find its way back to you. The person who surrenders doesn't lose power. They embody it. They understand that love isn't proven through pursuit. It's expressed through peace. They don't beg for closure because they already carry it within. They don't chase validation because their worth is no longer negotiable. This kind of surrender is sacred. It's a return to divine order. It's choosing alignment over attachment, truth over control, freedom over fear. And from that place of surrender, everything changes. The avoidant who once ran begins to sense the shift. They feel that the energy has been reset, that your love no longer cages, it liberates. And liberation is the highest form of love. It's the love that says you are free to go, and I am free to stay whole. And it's in that moment of release that they often begin to come back, not because you chased, but because your surrender reminded them of what peace feels like. You've become the still point in their storm, the one who doesn't cling, the one who simply trusts. That energy doesn't demand, it attracts, it doesn't plead, it radiates. That's the power of surrender. It turns letting go into the ultimate act of strength. Love without control is the purest form of love there is. It's the kind that doesn't come with conditions, expectations, or timelines. It doesn't need to grasp, to prove, or to possess. It simply is. And yet, that's the kind of love that most people find hardest to give, especially when fear is involved. Fear of loss, fear of abandonment, fear of being forgotten. But real love, the kind that changes both souls forever, cannot exist in the presence of fear. Love and control cannot live in the same space. When you learn to release control, to love without attachment, you open the door to something sacred, freedom. Freedom doesn't mean detachment in the cold sense. It means allowing love to flow without resistance. It means trusting that what's meant for you will stay, not because you forced it, but because it recognizes safety in your energy. Avoidants, more than anyone, feel this difference. They sense the vibration of control versus the energy of acceptance. They can feel when love comes from peace or when it's laced with need. And the truth is, avoidants run from control because it reminds them of suffocation, but they're drawn to freedom because it reminds them of safety. When you stop trying to control how love unfolds, something miraculous begins to happen. The energy between you shifts. You no longer need them to act a certain way, to text back quickly, to reassure you. You no longer measure love by proximity or proof. You measure it by peace. You stop needing to be chosen because you've already chosen yourself. And when your energy moves from grasping to trusting, it sends a silent message. You are free to go, but if you stay, it will be real. That message speaks directly to the avoidant soul. It tells them, this love doesn't demand anything from you. You can breathe here. Hebrew, the beauty of loving without control is that it turns love into expansion, not contraction. When you love freely, you no longer shrink to fit someone else's fear. You no longer silence your needs to maintain connection. You simply allow everything to be what it is, moment by moment. And paradoxically, that freedom is what creates deeper intimacy. Because now, connection isn't built on fear. It's built on choice. You choose to love. They choose to return. And that mutual choice, born from freedom, holds more power than any forced connection ever could. Avoidants are used to being pursued. They're used to being someone's emotional project, someone's attempt to heal, fix, or win over. But when you step into the kind of love that doesn't chase, doesn't control, doesn't manipulate, it feels foreign to them. It feels new. It feels safe. They begin to realize that love can exist without intensity, without pressure, without guilt. And for perhaps the first time in their lives, they begin to feel what real connection feels like. Connection that doesn't demand their surrender, but welcomes their truth. Loving without control also means trusting timing. It means knowing that you can't rush someone's readiness. You can't make them see what they're not ready to face. You can only hold space, steady, compassionate, and free of expectation. When you do this, you align yourself with divine timing. You stop trying to drag something into the present that belongs to the future. And that alignment brings peace because you're no longer fighting reality. You're flowing with it. Through the avoidant feels this. Even when they're silent, even when they're distant, they can feel the difference in your energy. They can feel when you've stopped trying to pull them back and started trusting your own light. That's when their curiosity awakens. Because suddenly, you're not another person trying to change them. You're a person living in peace. You've become what they secretly crave: stability, freedom. And that energy doesn't go unnoticed. It's what draws them back again and again. Loving without control also heals you. It teaches you that your peace is not negotiable. It shows you that love doesn't mean losing yourself. It means returning to yourself. It reminds you that you don't need to prove your worth to be worthy. You start to understand that love is not about possession. It's about resonance. And when two energies resonate in freedom, they rise together instead of pulling each other down. This kind of love is divine because it mirrors how the universe loves you, without control, without condition. It allows, it trusts, it holds space for what's meant to unfold. And in that space, miracles happen. Avoidants come back not because you chased them, not because you waited, but because your energy became free. You showed them that love doesn't have to be a trap. It can be a home. You became the living proof that connection can coexist with independence, that love can coexist with freedom. And once they feel that kind of love, uncluttered, pure, without pressure, they never forget it, because it speaks to the deepest truth within them, that what is freely given is the only thing worth returning to. Love without control is the highest vibration of all. It's the moment you realize you never lost them. You simply found yourself. And from that place of wholeness, love no longer chases, it calls. It doesn't bind, it liberates. It doesn't fade, it transforms. And so, when you look at the pattern, when you really understand why the avoidant always returns, it's not because of the words you said, the effort you made, or the strategies you used. It's because you transformed. You stopped chasing what was running, and you became what they were running from: peace, presence, truth. You embodied the one thing their soul was silently searching for, unconditional love that doesn't demand, doesn't control, and doesn't crumble when unchosen. Hebrew, the power was never in convincing someone to stay. The power was in remembering who you are when they go. Because when you stop chasing, you create space for healing, for alignment, for the divine to move. You return to yourself. And in that sacred return, everything that is truly meant for you begins to find its way back. Not because you begged for it, but because you became a magnet for it. This is what life and love are truly about. Returning to the truth that peace is your power, wholeness is your magnetism, and surrender is your strength. You are not here to chase love. You are here to become it. When you stand in that energy, you stop running after validation and start attracting connection. You stop waiting for someone to recognize your worth and begin to live from it. And from that place, everything changes. The avoidant may come back, they may not, but you will never be the same. And that is the real victory. Because in the end, love is not about winning someone over. It's about awakening to the love within you. That was never lost. You've become the calm in your own storm, the peace you once searched for in others. And from that stillness, you no longer chase what flees. You attract what belongs. Hebrew, thank you for listening. May you walk in your peace, live in your truth, and love without fear. Until next time, stay grounded, stay free, and never forget the power that's already within you. Goodbye.